Same old trouble, villains always knocking at the door. Pretty pictures on the page, but nothing ever stays the same.
Thank you, Vandello, and welcome again to Graphically Novel. My name is Josh Wasta, a.k.a. Fallout Fieri, and with me, as always, is the constant, unending racism in our society, to my hope that it might someday end, but the realization that, nope, It won't.
Ow.
It's Bear.
You take one shot at a guy on a bonus episode and suddenly he comes back swinging. And with us, as always, the lovely and talented, the Baronessa, Miss Jennifer Howland.
Thank you very much. And it is my distinct pleasure again this season to introduce our guest, who is someone, Bear, that you are very familiar with.
I've never met the man before in my life.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Our guest today is Luke Wieser.
Hey, everyone.
So it's Bear's little brother.
Yay!
Which we have discussed you several times on this show before because...
You've disgusted him?
Well, probably.
If he's been listening to the show.
If he's been listening to the show, probably, yeah.
I don't know who you guys are.
No, much as I talk about my brother Phil a lot on this show, Bear will talk about Luke a lot on this show as well. So it's great to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this episode for From Hell, as we return
As we
once
talk about
again.
our childhood. Oh, wait, sorry. No.
Yeah, but as we go back to the well, our second season was 3 Alan Moore episodes, and now here we are once again with more.
It was a trial.
Yes, it was.
Luke, I think you're a better man than me if you actually read through all of that.
I was prepared. I made sure and got some brand new recording equipment. I read through the whole graphic novel. Now, I can't say I read through all of the citations in the back, though. That would have taken me another month to get through. But
yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So, and we will get into it as we discuss Alan Moore as we have in the past. Maybe even a few more tidbits on the mad Rasputin writer. But before we do that, we have started a new tradition here in season 3. And that tradition is that one of us, it has been me thus far, but it's the first weekend that we've recorded the first 3 episodes. So maybe others will take the ball going forward. But we have a themed drink that either as listeners you can join with us and go ahead and make yourself one if you have the ingredients. My co-hosts do not know what this drink will be that fits with From Hell.
And we're scared.
And
I'm not scared.
Bear has an idea.
I'm happy. If that's what it is.
I've watched this movie a dozen times. I'm scared.
So, Bear, what was your idea?
I don't want to shoot absinthe. Please don't make me shoot
No,
absinthe.
you don't shoot it. You sip it.
It's worse.
That means it's going to be in my mouth longer.
So you take one sip and then you give the rest to me.
Okay.
Except that is not.
Dang it.
That. And for this, we're going to go a little bit into my thought process.
Oh, no.
What are you knowing for? You live there.
Sorry,
and
what?
work.
I'm going to go a little bit into my thought process. So, From Hell, this graphic novel that we have read, and the movie did a very good job of being more succinct about it, had many themes to it. And I started the very beginning of this with one of those themes, and that theme was anti-Semitism and racism, which unfortunately is still something we have today. And in this context, in Jack the Ripper's time, we did not have the modern context that we have for anti-Semitism especially, which we will use as a mirror on our society.
I am not shooting Manischewitz.
No. Weird. So, what do you call people now that hold this anti-Semitic racist view?
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
No, Luke.
So I think we figured it out.
We didn't catch it before.
I know, right?
We call
Do you know
them
what
Nazis.
it is? Do you know what it is?
And
Steph?
what is
Yeah, you do.
what is hell full of?
Mm-hmm.
Hell's
Dead Nazis.
Dead Nazis. For those
Oh,
that are
no.
not familiar with this drink, there is a history.
You know, I already brushed my teeth this morning.
And they're nice and chilled. They've been in my freezer for a long time.
Also, this is Josh's favorite shot.
It is my favorite shot.
Do not give me that healthy of a pour. Thank you. Jesus.
For those that are not familiar with this shot, it is equal parts frozen, well, as cold as you can get it, Jägermeister and Rumpelminz.
I will drink the Rumpelminz all day long, and actually would have drank the Rumpelminz with the Yukon Jack. But
yeah, well,
but this is
Josh
just toothpaste.
girly drunk.
Girly drink drunk.
White girl wasted.
Yeah.
Leave me in my closet with my pink squirrel.
Oh,
All right.
my God.
So here we. Oh yeah, that got nice.
I hate
polarization.
you.
Well, that's how most wives are supposed to feel.
Oh.
Sláinte.
God. Ugh.
Oh yeah.
Over the lips, past the gums. Look out, stomach. Here it comes.
That's what I told them during the snake bite.
There we go. Okay, so now that we got that out of the way,
That's like smoking a really shitty menthol cigarette.
I
Oh,
thought it tasted like dirty toothpaste.
dirty.
wow.
Is that like the toothpaste that you accidentally like get out of the tube and then try to stuff back in and then reuse it later?
Oh my God.
I don't know, but I think Dirty Toothpaste is the name of my Butthole Surfers cover band.
Oh, I don't know. That's a stretch.
Oh,
So, From Hell, Alan Moore.
I've got a beer to chase that with.
So, I'm going to start with...
Beer, please.
I'm going to start with I had never read From Hell. I'd never read the graphic novel. Familiar with the movie, although not something that I'll watch like all the time. I think this is the first time I've watched it in 4 or 5 years. Definitely the first time we've watched it together.
Yeah. I actually, it's one of those movies that, you know how it is. You have HBO something. It's one of those movies, if it's on, I will just sit down and watch no matter where it is in the movie. So I have a very distorted timeline of how things happen in the movie.
And in the movie that kind of fits in actually because he's on an opium trip enough that you're just kind of like, oh, I've stepped in somewhere.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing too, is one of my other favorite podcasts is called We Hate Movies, where 4 guys from New York just sit down and trash movies. But they refer to movies like this that you can be flipping through on TV as a hangover movie because it's a perfect, I'm laying on the couch, I feel like death, the remote lands on this, I'm like, sure.
My mother calls those ironing movies.
Oh,
So those are like the mindless movies. You don't have to pay. You don't like the plot is either you've seen it so often you don't have to pay attention to the plot, or it is completely mindless. So you can have it on while you're doing other tasks.
Sure.
There
So
you
anything that Bear and I was watching in between year 2000 and 2008.
Yeah, about that. Yeah.
Well, see, it is an all-encompassing kind of movie for Bear when you talk about the Dune miniseries, because the Dune miniseries,
That
he
was
will
my-
turn it on.
That was my hangover movie. That was my falling asleep movie. That was my like background noise movie. That was just I
Had a bad day.
I had a bad day and I want to watch a bunch of people die movie. Like
Yeah, right.
Oh. You know what? That's John Wick for me now.
that's a good call.
Yeah.
You
Which
fast
exciting news. Charlize Theron
Wait,
confirmed that Netflix is working on Atomic Blonde 2.
Oh,
Yes.
sweet.
And B, in the same interview, somebody brought up how Atomic Blonde seemed to have very like John Wick roots. And she said, actually, we did do a lot with John Wick. She's like, and how cool would it be to have a universe where the timeline works where those two characters meet?
That
So
would be
she's like
amazing.
actively pitching the idea of an Atomic Blonde John Wick crossover.
So it would be kind of a prequel for John Wick. Oh, I love it.
Which I think is what the Continental's going to be.
Ooh,
Because the Continental TV show is going to be a prequel to the John Wick movies.
okay.
Anyway.
Back on track.
Yeah. We have a track? Cool. So, Luke, before we get too much further into From Hell, we ask all of our guests, and this is the first time that you've been on our show, what is your relationship with comic books? What's your history with comic books?
So I really didn't get into comic books per se, but I knew of a lot of stuff. Like I would say, like for example, most people think comic books, they think like X-Men. Well, I didn't necessarily dive into the comics. That was the Saturday morning cartoon for me. So it was, I just kind of assimilated into the comic side of geek culture. I kind of skirted the edge of it. I was very much a big fan of it. For example, like my first work of Alan Moore that I had actually read or watched or anything like that was one of my college roommates gave me or lent me his copy of The Watchmen. And which that was something I had never like read or seen before, like ever. Like, I always thought, comics were more not even necessarily campy or cartoony, but they had a certain thing, like they weren't really that serious before. Like, but then The Watchmen came around and introduced me to Alan Moore, and I was just like, damn, like this is actually some really like hardcore stuff here. So I would say novice at best would be my intro into it, but slowly but surely I've been starting to pick up a few things here and there.
Awesome. So are there any current favorites? Is there anything on your shelf now that, when you're relaxing or whatever, you just go and grab?
Well, let's see here. I mean, there's been a few things like I delved in a little bit. Dynamite Comics was working with Paizo to do a Pathfinder line of comics that I was reading for quite some time, which was really interesting. But as far as a lot of mainstream stuff, not really. Like, there's a few graphic novels I'll pick up. Definitely I'm going to keep From Hell on my read every so often list, though. I don't know. I am actually about due for another read through of The Watchmen, though.
Yeah, and when you're done with that, so how long has it been since you read The Watchmen? I'm curious because this will be a good follow-up to our last season episode on The Watchmen.
Yes.
That was, let's see here. I first read it in 2001, and then I read it again after I saw the movie. And then I was really stunned with how well the movie went with the graphic novel, because normally you think, oh, they're basing a movie off a comic book, what are they going to throw out this time, because everybody has that. I'm sure you guys have the whole thing, like, I want to read this first or watch the movie first before I read it, or so on and so forth, because otherwise it's going to ruin it for me. I'll break this now. I watched From Hell first before I actually read it, because I saw it many times when it first came out. But then after reading it and then watching the movie again, I actually didn't like the movie at all. I was actually really upset with it. I was just like, oh my God, you ruined everything. But no, not everything. Not everything. But I totally understand the whole dichotomy, because it really changed my viewpoint of it. So
yeah.
As far as that, yeah, it was soon after Watchmen came out that I read it again. And it stayed pretty true, at least in my mind. And that was what I was really impressed with.
So I'd be interested. Definitely write us, and anyone that would like to, graphicallynovel@gmail.com. If you have any comments on our show, or if we have encouraged you to go back, I highly recommend, Luke, that I would love to, if you go back and reread it, listen to our episode on Watchmen, and give us your responses, because I would read those at the beginning of an episode, just because I'm really interested in how people feel based on what we've said or how we've felt. I'm really interested in your take on From Hell, the graphic novel, versus the movie now, because I have the feeling that at least two members of this panel feel the opposite way. But for example, we had a comment recently from John Schwegler, who wrote in and wanted, he had listened to our episode on building our dream team, our bonus episode.
Sure. Yep.
And he was like, I really enjoyed it. Here's how I would do it. And I'm like, I love that. I think it's really interesting. I'm going to have to pull that up at some point. And
no, I love that energy. I mean, that's
right.
fantastic.
That's what we want.
Yeah.
No, but we do want to have that conversation. It's another reason why we moved our webpage specifically to our Facebook. A, cost too much money for what people were using it for, but B,
better
now we have it's our own forum.
Yep.
Facebook is completely our forum now. So when you see episodes come up on our Facebook, absolutely start having conversations. keep them respectful. I just watched two guys get in a huge fight that ended with each of them calling the other cucks and assholes over whether or not they liked an episode of MST3K this week.
Wow,
so
man.
Man, that seems a little extreme.
it was a little extreme.
Well,
it was on my post about Diabolique, which was the
Yeah, that was actually fabulous. I loved it. But yeah, it's a little scary. The nerd powder keg.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like, I enjoy the new Star Wars for what they are. I have no, and my issues with it, with the little bits that I'm like, that dragged on a little long or whatever, have nothing to do with the fact that, oh my God, Rey, you're putting it to a woman. Well, yeah, the best sci-fi in the last 20 years has had women in the main roles, like Buffy. Let's just start with Buffy. Buffy is probably one of the greatest 21st century.
So I just want to interrupt you there and say, Luke, do not be afraid to jump in and say, hey, you know what? We're here today to talk about From Hell.
Buffy was the greatest show of all time. I'm going to let you finish, but...
I love it. Angel was actually...
Luke very much will wait, like me, will wait for Josh to put his foot in his mouth and then jump on it in a bit.
Yeah. Yeah. And he doesn't get to do it as often as you do.
to jump back, the whole issue that we had with Star Wars is the fact that once you get a fandom that's so big, there will not be a storyline, or there will not be anything that will be able to appease 100% of the fan base. And honestly, as much as I hate to say it, some of the worst things to happen to any sort of fandom is the fans.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Well, and that shouldn't be your goal as a creator.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. You shouldn't be trying to appease your fans.
No, you should be creating
you should
your
be
art
creating
to create
your art as you see it and as you imagine it and as you create it. And then if people don't like it, well, fuck them.
Well, and that's the thing that goes back. And Luke, I realize you have not listened to this episode because we have not released it yet. But our Tank Girl episode, we talked about how basically Hollywood tried to co-opt the Riot Girl movement,
right?
And it failed. They did not capture what they were supposed to capture, and in fact, they tried to force other elements that felt so out of place that you knew you were watching two very different movies at the same time.
Well, of course. Yeah. How long have we been watching things come out of the Hollywood that's through the lens of a rich white man?
Oh, yeah.
Bingo.
Yes. Absolutely. So, From Hell.
Yes, back to From Hell.
A movie that I would argue
it's about rich white men.
It is about rich white men, but it's also
about stuffy British rich white men.
It's also about editing Ellen Moore to make sense and not bore their audience to death.
The boring the audience, I will give you.
Yeah.
So here's where we're going to go. Luke, I would like you to make your any more case that you have before we go into, because I know how I felt about the comic, and I would love to hear your take before I start to go negative.
Well, it might go negative fairly quick, but in when I was reading through the graphic novel, of course, what's our policy on spoilers here? So
spoilers are full for the movie. You can allude to things that are in the comic that may be different. So you can say, oh, X, like, okay, I will give you an example that we will follow for this. In the movie From Hell, Johnny Depp's Inspector character is a combination of two different characters from the graphic novel.
Exactly.
There's Inspector, and then there is the charlatan. And in fact, he's actually a psychic. The charlatan psychic in From Hell is a completely different character that Victoria actually hires and brings in to that's the level that I'm like, okay, very, very surface. Here's the difference. But I'm not going into specific plot points.
Makes sense. So it's actually some of that whole thing. The way that when you see the film and it's presented where Johnny Depp is actually a mashup between two different characters, and it almost as if they drop you in media res, whereas they took it further back to start with the graphic novel. The whole thing that it would. the movie to me was more of police procedural mystery and shoving that angle more so than the conspiracy and like how insane Jack the Ripper was that they put out in the graphic novel. Like that was one of the big things to me. And I was actually texting Bear the other day too as I was watching it. Like, I'm 10 minutes into this film and I hate it. It's horrible. It's terrible. I hate it. It sucks.
He was, and that was where we started the conversation again about how I always prefer to watch the movie first. Right. Because like if I watch the movie, I can enjoy the movie for the movie. And then if I read the book at some later date, I can enjoy the book for the book. And just because I've had so many times it's been spoiled doing it the other way around.
Well, see, normally I'm like that too, but the thing is that we had watched it so many times when it came out on DVD. We're just like, what do we watch? Oh, let's watch From Hell. Okay, so I know I'd seen it multiple times. I know exactly how the film came out, but after I read the graphic novel, I just did a complete 180 on that. I'm just like, but it never like clicked until I watched the movie again. It was really weird. I was just like, oh my god.
Yeah, so and there are multiple beats like that are very, very different, and I have some notes that I want to get into, especially when it comes to the main plot of the movie. Because for those who are only familiar with the movie, first of all, you should know a couple things about the graphic novel From Hell. It is not a graphic novel.
It is 10 graphic novels.
10 graphic novels. You can find it all put together into one volume.
I highly recommend you reading it on a Kindle, because what it does for the Kindle, they actually have a mode where it'll actually shrink it down into like 1 or 2 frames at a time. So you're not looking at the whole page and trying to translate it, with your Rosetta Stone on what the hell is going on here. It's more of a.
I'm gonna jump right in and let Jen take over, because there was just a fight about this.
Hate and rage.
She needs to know what Kindle program you use.
Kindle.
Oh, Kindle. Yeah, we have Amazon Fire.
Mother. Yeah.
So she's been trying with her Amazon Fire for all of these. She prefers digital over physical copies.
Yeah.
And we cannot find a comic program that she likes.
See, if I had a physical copy, I think I would have probably threw it across the room multiple times. Since this is actually a piece of electronic hardware, I don't want to necessarily throw it across the room, even though it only cost me like $30.
And the reading of it, like I made it through the 4th graphic novel, and I was just like, the second one about ruined me. Like I was about done there. I'm just like, oh my god, this is just an entire graphic novel of him talking about magic and Freemasonry and Roman gods and
setting up the insanity of Jack the Ripper. That was what I missed about the movie. It's like, you just think that he's just doing it to kill. No, he is legitimately insane.
Oh yeah,
no.
I didn't need an entire graphic novel to see that.
But
hey, if Alan Moore said you need an entire graphic novel, you need an entire graphic novel, son, and you read that thing.
Well, and I did read something that said that Alan Moore, with his hand full of silver rings, would punch the movie in its nuts if he could.
Yes. No. Of all the movies that have been made about Alan Moore's work, he hates this the most.
Right.
Well, yeah, because this is like his entire life story.
Right, this is magic and conspiracy.
Right? This is the moment that he started to say things like he is a grand wizard. Not different. He is a wizard. And he started to say things like, of course I created my own god. I'm a writer. And by creating my own god, I will then bring God into existence.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I see all of that in this graphic
novel.
I
mean, that's the problem with being a creative.
Talking about bringing the crazy, I think that the movie actually did a good job of showing that Jack the Ripper was fucking nutter.
Right. We can also ruin the movie. We assume people have watched the movie, so at the end it ends up being the doctor, the
Dr.
royal
Wells.
doctor. Yeah.
Dr. Wells.
Dr. Wells.
But I think, well, first of all, fair disclosure here. My grandfather was a Mason.
As was mine.
My mother and my grandmother were both Order of the Eastern Star, which is the female Mason
Equivalent. Yeah.
Well, it's not really equivalent. It's sort of a side thing to give the women something to do because, you know, the Masons were more important kind of thing. Yeah.
Sure.
Oh, yeah, no, this whole, by the way,
Yeah.
Wells's whole male dominance
Yes.
into the 21st
Yes.
century thing
Yes.
is, now that I have gotten the barest glimpse of Freemasonry, holy shit.
Right. And so as a child, it's interesting because my mother really did try to, like, she tried to raise me in a way that broke from the way she had been raised. And so she felt that when she was a child that she was made to feel a lot of guilt and a lot of pressure to be a certain way.
Wait a minute. I thought we
and
weren't talking
falling-
about our childhood.
and
Michael Bay fucked up Transformers.
and so, you know, she really moved from that. And, you know, it was the 70s. So we were all, you know, free to be you and me. We were transactional analysis for kids. And, you know, it was a very weird time. But she did a great job. By the time I was a young adult, oh, you could not guilt me into anything, girlfriend. No way. But as I got older, I started seeing, because when I was in high school, she went from being just a rainbow girl. She went into the Eastern Order, the Order of the Eastern Star. She willingly, as an adult, did the same thing that her mother did, that she rebelled so hard against. She did it herself. And I just remember being fascinated because it's so witchy. It's awesome. It's really cool, except for the whole, like, God, Jesus, and the subservient to men thing. Yeah. Because it's like, it's a very, very witchy, ritual-y thing. I mean, just like the Masons are. But it's, you know, the women have to wear long white gowns and be unadorned when they go to the ritual. And then, you know, it's like they don't talk about it. It's just like Masons.
It's like we're walking into
Mormon temple?
No, what's the Tom Cruise movie?
Eyes Wide Shut?
Eyes Wide Shut, yeah.
No masks.
Yeah, not that fun.
Not that fun. Not that kinky.
No, because the men and the women are, okay.
No orgies.
Well, there could be.
We weren't deep enough in the order to know.
Yeah,
that's true.
You get the
all I know is the one time, one of the times that we were LARPing in the temple, and we were on the upper floor, and one of the players went down to use the restroom, and a few of them passed, and overheard one of them said to the other, "Oh, there are women folk in the building." It's like, okay, you might want to tone down a little bit on the ritual there, pops.
Yeah.
So, very recently, and I'm going to keep this vague for the purposes of the friends that we have, but we were invited, Jen and I, to go to a friend's. It was at a Masonic temple, and it was like he described
history.
It as a ghost tour. So when you tell somebody,
like me,
you're going to go on a ghost tour.
You're going to haunted houses, right?
Yeah. At the Masonic temple. This is awesome.
Yes.
Who died at the temple?
Yeah. So we show up and we're going, a ghost tour in a Masonic temple is when you go from room to room in the Masonic temple, and they basically are giving you a tour, but also there are people
trying to indoctrinate you into
represented as previous dead Masons telling you
like
their tale.
Historic Masons, because they're ghosts.
So this is like
air quotes.
This is like going through the nativity if you're walking through a church.
Yes.
Oh, so you went through the Masonic Stations of the Cross.
Kind of, yes.
Kind of, but also as a woman, I was like, fuck yeah. Where's my phone camera? I'm taking pictures of all this shit because they've got some sweet ass, like,
just, it's a museum.
The collection, I mean, there are many things there that should be returned to the indigenous people from which they were taken. Oh my God.
So about 10 minutes into this tour, our friend who had invited us, I happened to mention that my mother's father, my abuelo, was a Freemason in Puerto Rico, and that I had inherited a hat box that had a hat and 3 books that were in Spanish. And Jen was ignored
No, yeah, here's
the
the thing.
rest of the night.
Well, and the other thing was, as soon as he said that, I'm like, yeah, my father was a Freemason as well. And my grandmother was in the Order of the Eastern Star. My mother was a Rainbow Girl and in the Order of the Eastern Star. And I have some of the things from my grandfather that I inherited. But it was like, oh, she ain't got a dick. Let's ignore her.
Yeah, it was bad. It was really, really bad. But anyway.
That's
So how do
okay.
you feel about this episode being Bash the Masons?
Yeah. Well, when I end up dead, our 10 listeners should probably.
I am mentally
report something.
sound. I do not wish to.
He's not of that sound of mind. He did just make us shoot dead Nazis.
That's
Right.
true.
And I'm not saying like, Trump, but like
That's true.
liquor.
Yeah. Anyway.
Well, it would be pointless to shoot Nazis that were already dead. I mean, it would just be a waste.
Yes. I
It'd
don't
be
think it's a
fun.
waste. I'm going to shoot another Nazi right now.
You could just pour me a shot of Rumplemans. I'd be fine with that.
Well, I got plenty of
Oh,
Rumplemans. This is, I think, the
no.
last
Here we
of my
go.
Jägermeister. Yeah, I got to get a new emergency Jaeger bottle for my freezer now.
And see, just the fact that you've made decisions in your life that include the phrase emergency Jaeger bottle makes me question a lot.
Yeah,
You
those
should.
3 words shouldn't be in a sentence that comes out of your mouth ever again.
Listen, if at the point that I said, "Hey, I got a great idea for a podcast," go fuck yourself, hipster.
You know what? It's not my fault.
It's true. It is
Jen
Jen's
was the
fault.
one.
It is Jen's fault.
This is quite all right. It is a podcast is just a natural progression of the middle-aged man. It's just that's
Well,
what happens.
And I'm so busy. I just needed him to do something,
So back to From Hell. I'm sorry to leave fun. Back to so here's the thing about this graphic novel and why I enjoyed the movie more. And I think I may have enjoyed this graphic novel when I was younger. Last season we did Swamp Thing, V for Vendetta, Watchmen. I think it was just the
we
three.
just call him Uno Mas.
Yeah.
And in those we discussed, and this was my discussion. My realization was that as a young man I loved Alan Moore. But as an older man, I realized that there is a difference between shouting down the problems in society and putting a flashlight on them, and 30 years later needing to offer solutions. And while this is brilliant, knowing also that this catapulted Alan Moore to become more of a Freemason and more of a magician, it didn't really offer solutions to me. V for Vendetta is the closest I can think of to something that offers solutions, and they are full-out rebellion.
I don't know. Watchmen offered a solution.
Well, what a
I
solution.
just don't know how to grow giant squid that can psychically scream and destroy half of Trump Tower.
You know,
Well,
you're
aren't
not-
you really putting the cart before the horse? I mean, we need the big blue naked guy first.
Amen.
See, Jen's with me.
But yeah, it's there are Alan Moore for his time did some amazing things to shine the spotlight, but that was 30 years ago. You know, now that we're starting to look at where we are in the world now, we all know it. Half of us are actively supporting the things that are bad that were highlighted, and the other half are desperately trying to fight against it. So is it better now? You know, I generally, because I'm old, don't use the quote unquote woke word, but so we're all aware now. Is it better?
Well, I wouldn't say we are aware. We are more aware
Right. I think that
with one O.
I think that getting better as humans is incremental, which is unfortunate, but it happens, and that's good. That's the positive. But because it's incremental, we as individuals might not be able to recognize that things are changing. And I know that there are people who say that things need to change faster. It needs to happen faster. Things need to be this way now. And as a species, we don't do that.
No, we really
don't change. I mean, evolution doesn't change that quickly. And I'm not saying that it's right. You know, I'm not saying that the things that are wrong shouldn't be corrected immediately. But as a species, we just don't have.
We have the capability.
We do.
We do, because one person sticks a dog in a piece of luggage in an overhead compartment in an airplane, and there was legislation the next day. Right. Literally going through Congress the next day.
What if it's not necessarily a force of change or an instigation of change, but maybe a bookmark in history and culture? Like, granted, yes, From Hell is a fictional account. However, it was heavily researched and matched the time. And everything in that, you know, aside from the fact that, you know, it's false as in regards to this was not the case, but like this, like everything that in there for the times was legitimate, and it has been published, it has been released, it has been in circulation for God knows how many years. It's essentially a bookmark in culture and criticism at some point in time.
Yes.
Whether or not that necessarily facilitates a change, it serves as a reference point.
Yeah,
Yes.
and I mean, obviously, throughout my comments during this episode, the things that really struck me were the anti-Semitism and the racism that was kind of the background. In the movie, you see a lot of people basically being like, there are foreigners and there are Jews. Go and look for them. Obviously, this is not the book. Man, that gets way more.
Like, oh my God. Like, there are American Red Indians in town. Go check out them. They probably did it.
There are savages. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh
there's
God.
also I don't know if you all had noticed too, but there's also, well, of course, overt classism, because we know that was the whole thing. You know, the Whitechapel area is known for, at the time, was known for, you know, the destitute and stuff like that. But if you noticed in the graphic novel, the way that the art style changed depending upon where the characters were at.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Right. There was more color and actually probably more solid black in anything that had to do with the rich, because anything black was something that was a dyed item back in those days and cost a lot of money. And so you actually get into those scenes with the Queen, and those frames there was a lot of black in those frames. There was a lot of anything else was blacks. It was blues. It was rich colors.
Right, because they could afford dyes because they were royals.
Sure.
And then you get into the scenes in Whitechapel and everything is black and white, but the black is much more sketchy and thinner lined.
Well, but also the women who are, you know, having to work for a living, they all are in red or emerald or blue, or they're in color. Not in black or white. And there's another show that I highly recommend on Hulu. Hulu, called Harlots, which is also in about the same time period, but it really shows like how desperate people were to have to get into that line of work, and then to have the aristocracy say, you need to be punished for being like this. Like they chose to do it. Like it was a choice for them to live the way that they live.
I actually want to bounce off of that, because we've had discussions on this show specifically about sex work and being, you know, sex work positive in a way that in this society we have shunned sex work, but it really should just be something that is accepted and is legalized.
It's the oldest profession.
Yes.
Still not legal in most of this country.
Right. But yeah, it's the religious stigma really that it comes down to.
Right.
But, and I know that some of us did not read this far, in From Hell, it is the circle of Mary and her circle blackmails the basically the crown
indirectly, but yes,
that they know about the baby and the prince and everything else.
Right.
In the movie, it is that they are
unwitting.
Yes, they are collateral damage for having been at the secret wedding.
Right.
The crown is aware of them and that they know, and so
Yes.
they've just kind of bypassed the blackmail.
Right.
Yeah.
For 2001, that is an extremely sex-positive view.
Yeah.
I mean, I can only imagine that the meeting in the Hollywood room was, well, they're already whores. We can't make them blackmailers too. But inadvertently...
Well, no, I think that the whole... Okay, I understand like the jest there, but the thing is they were trying to make them the victim because those women who were killed by Jack the Ripper were victims.
Yes.
Yes.
And so I think that there was a feeling that they had to make it black and white and not make it gray.
And that was one thing that I picked up reading through the graphic novel. There were a few people that I would consider that maybe were, I don't know if I want to even say innocent, but the varying degrees. It almost seemed like when you're reading the graphic novel, there was no such thing as a good person in the whole graphic novel, with the exception of a few individuals that were forced into a bad position where they had to do things and stuff like that. But there was really like even degrees. Like even the inspector wasn't even a good person either.
Well,
Right.
but that shows through in both
Right.
the movie and the
Yeah.
graphic
Right.
novel.
I don't, other than the opium addiction, I can't think of a thing that he was vilified for in the movie.
Well, that's
Well-
because in the movie they changed his backstory.
Right.
Yes.
But that's what I'm saying.
Because in the movie, and this is a minor spoiler for the graphic novel, but
20 seconds if you want to avoid, go.
in the graphic novel, he was on his second wife and still married.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the difference between the movie and the graphic novel. Is in the movie he was only on his
He was
first,
a widower.
Yeah, he was a widower after his
Yeah.
first wife.
And you get the impression that the only reason that he started his opium addiction was to escape the pain
Yes.
of losing his wife.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think the movie tried to really put forth who the heroes were and who the villains were in a very clear, cut and dried way that Alan Moore was just like, no, fuck you. Everybody's got issues.
The only person that's not bad in this graphic novel is Baby Alice, and you only see her
You
for
don't know.
about
You don't
6
even know.
frames.
You don't even know about Baby Alice. Yeah.
Do you feel
Baby Alice killed a man in Reno just to watch him die.
do the three of you feel that maybe because of the change in perspective, because the graphic novel, just a heads up, is a omniscient narrator point of view, whereas the movie is from the
second-
inspector's point of view.
The
Well-
second book is to a T what you just said,
Yeah.
because he just
He is,
I liked Moore.
Wells.
I have loved all of Moore up to this point, and now I'm just like, oh, wow, this got long. Sorry, repeat that question again.
So, like, because with the change in perspective, like, do we think that might have also been why things didn't necessarily flow right for the film? Because the film, they made it from the perspective of, for the most part, the perspective of or they bounce back and forth between the Ripper and the Inspector.
Yeah,
Whereas
Inspector
the
Atwood.
Ripper, Inspector, and Mary.
Yep.
Right. Whereas the graphic novel, you are reading as the omniscient narrator. You're seeing everything unfold from the very beginning of the entire conspiracy to the very end.
I would say yes and no, because the way that we got it was broken into the original 10 books and in the digital format. But each book is from a different perspective. So the first book is from primarily an omniscient, but also Wells's perspective. The second book...
Well, the first book was basically Sir William's upbringing. It was his childhood.
You're correct. Sorry. Yes, I'm wrong.
Yeah. The first half of the first book.
Right,
Right.
the first half
Okay.
of the first book, then it moves to Wells in an omniscient, but also following him. The second book is following primarily the carriage driver, as he is
Yeah.
That was
poor
one thing I did
Netley.
not like about the film is they
Poor
barely
Yeah.
touched on Netley like going slowly insane over the whole thing. In the graphic novel, I'm just
Well,
like, yes, this man is like
100%. I'll
edge.
give you that. 100%.
Well,
I'll give you that.
But
We should-
I have to say, though, I mean, maybe it's because I've seen the movie so many times. I've seen it like, I don't know, 4 or 5 times. I see that because he's just like this dude, you know, he's like, yeah, I'm a dude. And then he's like, oh shit, something's going on. Oh my God, I'm involved in this. And then, oh my God, I am involved in this.
Well, and then
You
there
know?
was the member of the secret force or the special force that shows up and is like in the movie for like 30 seconds that is like, you need to do this for us. Your master is coming. You need to pick him up right away. There will be further instructions.
Yeah.
Like, it does set that up in a, I felt, brilliant way where you don't need all of the involvement that happens in the graphic novel.
Yes.
I don't know. I'm kind of stuck somewhere in the fence. I partially agree with Luke because yes, I was slowly going insane reading that second graphic novel where Sir William is literally going through and explaining all of these details to his carriage driver, and you just I'm going to spoil that for people because you need to know in advance the second graphic novel is wordy. You are going to read and read and read. You're going to learn more about the history of London. And I don't even know if that's the real history of London, but you're going to learn more about the history of London than you ever wanted to.
Oh, but the history of London is fascinating.
Yeah, it's fascinating, but I was on a time crunch. We had
I
a
will
schedule
give you
to keep.
I will give you the fact that once I had read the graphic novel, there were certain shots and scenes from the film that made a little bit more sense and a little bit more meaningful. Like there's
Cleopatra's Needle.
Yeah, Cleopatra's Needle. Some of the
Needle,
shots of the Whitechapel district and stuff like that, Cleveland Street, like some of those are just like,
Yes.
okay, this is where we're at, in the film. It's like we're 20 minutes in. This doesn't happen until like 2/3 of the way through the novel. What the hell's going on here?
Yeah.
It felt very out of time for me, which kind of going back to Netley is he just kind of, to me, it felt like they just kind of injected him into the film and there was no buildup with it. Like that second book, that Bear's talking about, where you're following him, you're just like, what the hell is this old duffer talking about? He's just sitting there going on crazy and like talking about this stuff. You mean I'm going to be stuck driving this guy around London? What the hell's going on here? I don't want to do this anymore. Get me out of here.
I figured out about a third of the way into that second graphic novel that if I would have actually had a map of London in front of me, I probably would have been able to draw out some kind of pattern from all the stops that he was reading off. But I
agree with that. I agree with that.
I just didn't care.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Normally, like it's the middle of summer, everybody's busy, everybody's got stuff going on. We're trying to get recordings in and stuff like that. And I'm like, I know there's something that's really cool that's going on here. It's taken a lot of time to set up. And if I actually did a little research on the side of reading this, it would probably be really awesome. And I just don't have time for that.
I would have to point out just real quick, too, there's another thing that upset me that from the novel compared to the film. In the film, when he has this hallucination, he puts the heart into the pot in the fireplace. The way that the graphic novel portrays that, there is a lot more involvement, probably on par with Bear's favorite second book of the graphic novel, but they kind of allude to that. Like it was kind of weak. Like after you read through the graphic novel, like, but they didn't do so much in the film to kind of set up his insanity. Like they knew, like, okay, yeah, he had the brain aneurysm thing. He was kind of going off and stuff like that, but they didn't necessarily. They couldn't go further into it because of the fact that would be like, what's the words I'm looking for? A disappropriate response, like
disproportionate response.
Yeah, disproportionate response. Like it would have been like if they would have went, sky high like they did in the graphic novel for that would have just, been way over the edge on it. So it was something like that. Like they didn't capture it the best they could, but then again, I don't think they were, I don't think that was the goal of the film anyway.
Well, I'm not sure that they had I think that I hate to be defending the film here because the film isn't.
Don't do it, Jen.
It's fine, but I feel like given the parameters that a Hollywood-produced movie has, they did a really excellent job of building the drama and putting the characters where they needed to be, because they needed to have in the movie, they needed to have that relationship between Eberlein and Sir Wells.
Sure.
Dr. Wells. They needed to have that.
Am I talking about the same person as Dr. Wells? That's Sir William, right?
Sir William.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
William Wells. So Dr. Wells and Eberlein, they need to have that meeting where he's searching and Wells, it's like part of him wants to
tell him, wants to brag.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
It's the serial killer thing.
Yes,
It's like, I have to brag.
Exactly.
Which is why he
Tell
tells him
everybody.
about the Lister knife. Which
Yes.
is why he starts to move him along the path to be like, but you're a common man. There's no way.
Right.
You know?
Well, and that's the thing. It's like the rudimentary drawing in the movie that Eberlein does. Seriously, you're going to get Lister knife from that? If
You're
you
the
didn't
Pictionary
know,
king.
yeah.
I want to
That's
play
a jump.
Pictionary with Jack the Ripper.
Well, because that's like, oh yeah, that's my knife.
Right.
But yeah,
There was something
that's what I would
now,
say.
I don't remember what it was.
Yeah, I would think that the graphic novels were. I mean, Alan Moore is dense. Like his writing is so.
I haven't
dense.
had really had any problem with anything else that he's done until I should
Swamp
say
Thing?
I read
Okay.
every word of Swamp Thing. I
Okay.
love the hell out of Swamp Thing. When I was reading Watchmen,
Mhm.
there was the sections that were taken from the excerpts from the book that was written in that
Yes.
in that universe.
I will totally admit I skipped.
Yes, I 100% skipped those because that was dense. But the rest of it, I just read and I actually got about halfway through it and went, I don't really think I need to read any more of this because they are practically word for word from the graphic novel what they did in the movie. Of course, then
Yeah.
I didn't realize it at the end. I didn't realize that the graphic novel had
A different ending.
stuff,
Yeah.
Psychic squid.
right?
Yeah.
Psychic alien squid.
Alien
Did it-
squid, which is actually that's already been spoiled by the
okay.
series.
All right.
Technically.
Right. The new series
So
goes
to
off
kind
of
of
that.
to kind of spin off, since we're kind of go back to shifting about more, I had another question. Is it just typical, since I've only gotten 2 graphic novels of his under, and after reading through this, I've been kind of half tempted to delve into actually read V for Vendetta instead of just watch the film or jump in the Swamp Thing. Is it typical of Alan Moore to write his characters that just like to instantaneously go from one place to another?
Yes.
Small spoiler alert.
A little bit.
Yeah. The other part that I'll say is out of those 2, I would recommend V for Vendetta as a read. V for Vendetta.
I love the hell out of Swamp Thing.
Yeah. Well, but okay. I will say if you liked From Hell out of all of these that we've done, just keep getting Alan Moore stuff. Because if you get it, I am 100%, and this goes for our listeners too. If you get Alan Moore, dude,
do all of it. Go for it.
Yeah. Go for it, because he's brilliant.
He's got some supremely brilliant moments.
Yes, because I think that I get about 35% of Alan Moore.
I'd say I'd probably get about 50 to 60%.
Okay.
Do you think maybe because with this being, I guess you could call this historical fiction, do you think this is a little bit different from his other stuff?
Yes and no.
I mean, technically, you could almost call V for Vendetta historical fiction.
Right. V for Vendetta is going to fall directly between Watchmen and this. V for
pretty much,
Vendetta
'cause this is like actual history. Watchmen is a spin-off on past events.
It is an alternate reality.
Yeah.
Is what Watchmen is.
Sure.
And
I would say
so-
the same thing for V for Vendetta is also an alternate reality.
Well, V for Vendetta, yes, because there are events that happen up until the crisis that creates the world that you're in. Whereas
more like-
Watchmen goes a little further back because
So more
Watchmen's
like-
going back to like Vietnam.
Yeah.
Well,
So more
earlier.
like Man in the High Castle style rather than
Yes.
like
Yes,
this happened in the past.
right. Absolutely. It is a there was a significant event that diverged timelines. Whereas Watchmen was more the world just kind of came into this because of several events. V for Vendetta is an event happened and it changed the trajectory of the world.
Right.
Same with Man in the Iron in the High Castle.
Yep. Well, yes.
It was this decisive victory of the Axis.
Right. I mean, Watchmen is more nuanced because it's like these small things happened in history that affected things happening in present day.
Right. It's multiple events instead of one event that changed things.
And I totally agree. I mean, Alan Moore is so dense and kind of crazy, but just brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. I mean, the stuff he writes is really great.
No, it's I can appreciate it, but more in the way that I am not a fan of Led Zeppelin or Nirvana. I appreciate what they gave to the culture. I am not fans of them.
I used to be a fan of Nirvana. Then when he shot himself, I happened to be, since I grew up in rural
I'm
South
sorry,
Dakota.
hold on 1 minute. Do you mean when Courtney Love injected him with a lot of heroin and shot him instead?
Sure.
Whatever.
Anyways, no, the reason why I got sick of it was because I grew up in rural South Dakota, and one weekend I happened to be away for a school thing at a hotel where we had cable, and I was just like, oh my God, there'll be MTV, and I'll actually get to watch some music videos, and this will be Kurt Cobain shot himself? I don't really care, but oh my God!
All Nirvana all the
They're
time.
playing Heart-Shaped Box every 30 minutes. Oh my God! It's all they're doing is talking about how awesome he wasn't. That
Careful.
I just stopped that. I stopped that sentence.
Okay, either the Freemasons or people that really like Nirvana have murdered us all.
Or Trump supporters.
Possibly Courtney Love.
Okay. All I have to say is my life intersects all of these points.
That's true.
And you know what? Meh. I am who I am, and I like
that's
what
all
I
that
like.
You am.
I like what I like,
You want some spinach?
and fuck all y'all.
She does always want spinach.
Okay.
I do.
Any other questions or points that anyone wants to bring for From Hell?
I'm pretty sure we had like some kind of structure for this episode that kind of just went
I
straight
did,
out the
and-
window
and
after a
I
couple
have-
of dead Nazis.
Roughly been following it.
Well, the funny part is for me is I would really love to talk about the graphic novel, but we're just trying to get people to go read the graphic novel, and I don't want
Yes.
to talk about the movie, and I don't want to talk about the movie.
You can
but-
talk about the graphic novel, just
So,
you got to be
Luke-
vague about it.
This is
Give
Josh
us-
will just edit all my parts out. That's all.
Give us your best pitch for why should people read the graphic novel? Because I think we're at the point where the three of us are like, just watch the movie, you'll be fine.
I mean, I'll probably read the rest of it just because I'm
He's a
this many
completist.
I'm this many hours deep. I'm like, let's just do it.
So if I was going to say,
FYI, that's how marriage happens.
I'm already in it. So,
What the what?
Not you, dear.
so
Oh,
if we're going to be talking in regards to that, I think people should read the graphic novel mainly because it is the film portrays it. I believe the film portrays it in more of a, like I said before, a police procedural, more of the mystery sense. Whereas the graphic novel focuses more on the Ripper's insanity and the entire conspiracy from beginning to end.
right.
So that way it isn't so much of the fact that, because everybody knows Jack the Ripper, famous serial killer, in Victorian era London. Everybody knows that part. I think the movie kind of emphasizes that part. Whereas the graphic novel shows more of, the conspiracy and how this came to be in the fictional sense, or what was, the
Right.
until it was proven, disproven that didn't happen. It's there is more to it than just the fact that he killed hookers in Whitechapel. It was, there was a reason for it. Here was the reasons, and this is why he did it this way, because the removal of organs and stuff like that. It's just like, well, why would somebody do that? He must have been crazy. Well, yeah, he was crazy. This is why it was crazy. This is how it turned out to be. And even got to the point where even the organizations that were part of that were just like, this is, it's time to stop now. It's like, well, yeah, well, he will stop as soon as the task is done. The task is done. Boom, it's all over. But because of Moore and the way that he's very meticulous about things, and as we've been pointing out, he's very dense. It's very, because of that structure, you just get drawn into that whole thing. Right. Like, it actually took me a long while before I realized, when I was first reading through the graphic novel, I'm like, oh, this is what they were talking about in the film. So then I was like, okay, let me backtrack a few pages to get caught up, since my brain's now caught up to what's going on here. Okay, this is actually what's happening. So I think it's if you're one of those people that wants to see where the film got its basis from, I would definitely read it. But if you're one of those people where this is going to ruin the film for me, or this will ruin the graphic novel for me, yeah, I'd still take a stab at it just because. But there may be, like, for me, like, I loved the movie at first, then I read the graphic novel and then watched the movie again. That was a big mistake. That was a big mistake.
This is actually, I kind of want to have this same experience. This is kind of the reason why I want to finish reading the rest of the graphic novels, is because, okay, now I want to read the rest of them, and I want to go back and watch the movie again, and I want to see if I have the same reaction.
It's kind of along the same comparison. Like, for example, I don't know how you guys did any of this, but I watched the first couple Harry Potter movies before I read any of the books. And it wasn't until I had seen Prisoner of Azkaban in the theater that I started reading the books. And at that point in time, my entire viewpoint of the Harry Potter film series just changed for me. So I know that some people have that whole thing, but I don't know how many people, if people have done it like midstream or anything like that before. But I think that will play a huge part of this.
I read all of the books of Harry Potter before I watched the movies. Not every. So the movies were starting to come out, so I watched them as they were coming out. But I read the books first, and I still have never watched the last movie of Harry Potter. Same. Because
but also,
the book was
fuck
just so
J.K.
good.
Rowling.
Also,
yes,
right now, fuck
also
J.K.
fuck
Rowling.
her. Yeah.
But
anyways,
J.K. Rowling.
That's fine. We can rag on her too in just a second. But so I actually started watching the movies. I didn't watch the first movie until, like, I think the second or third movie came out. So I was just like, oh my God, it's just, they're trying to do magic and they're trying to do it for little kids. And it's just, I'm like, I was pompous and I was above this. And I'm like, this is going to be awful. It's going to be terrible. So good. Right. And then I sat down and I sat down and watched it, and I was just like, oh my God, this is so fucking good. And I watched, I think I watched the first three, or I think it was the first four movies until I sat down. I think it was watching Goblet of Fire with your brother in the movie theater, and I almost kicked him in the head in the movie.
Yep,
theater.
that was that time. I was the same way too. It's like, shut up, Phil.
Shut up, Phil. We'd be sitting there, and like we'd be watching the movie, and it would cut scene, and he'd be like, "Skip 50 pages." Shut up. Watching the movie. Skip 75 pages.
Dude!
Like, dude, just let me enjoy this. Just shut up. And from that point, Phil was actually the one that handed me my first copy of the first book. And I got about probably 10 chapters in, and I put it down and I said, no, I'm going to watch the rest of the movies because there was already such a huge difference in the first 10 chapters of the book than there was in the first movie.
Yeah.
Then I was just like, nope, I'm going to watch the rest of the movies because I like the movies. I'm enjoying the movies. I'm going to watch them all, and then I'll go back and read. And at this point, I think I've only read through audiobooks through, because some people don't consider audiobooks reading, and you all can go to hell. But I've audiobooked my way through, I think, book 5, and I just kind of dropped it and moved on to other stuff. And honestly, I'm not 100% convinced that the things that were cut out were super necessary.
Right. Yeah.
You
Well,
know?
I mean, I was the parent of not young adults, but kids who were reading at that level. So I read all of them because I wanted to read them before I gave them to my children to read.
Oh, because you were a good parent.
And I thought it was a really great world, and I thought there were really great stories there. Again, as an adult, the kids kind of got a little whiny about, whatever. Parents are not trying to limit you. I mean, yes, in Harry Potter, some of them were, it's like but it's, okay, so you're just trying to get kids on your side. It's like, oh, all adults are trying to keep us from learning all the things we should learn. It's like, wow. Go read.
Well, and then adults started trying to teach them some of the things that they shouldn't have been learning, and everybody was just like, whoa.
Mm-hmm.
When we got into, what was it, books 5 and 6, it was just like, oh, we're actually teaching the unforgivable curses in class. That's awesome. It hurts a lot.
Yeah, so I finished Jurassic Park and Interview with the Vampire in the Carmike parking lot before going in to see the movies. So
did you regret that one?
Oh, Jurassic Park.
Jurassic Park, I was upset because my favorite scene was both the pterodactyl scene and floating down the river right after that, and they literally float past a sleeping T-Rex.
Mm.
And at the time, I think I was 94, so I would have been 13 or 14.
You would have been yeah, 5th or 6th grade, because I was in
No. It was high school.
13 or 14 is middle school.
Nope, I started freshman year at 13 years old.
Okay.
I graduated at 17.
So you read the book later. I read the book not long after it came out.
I was reading the book knowing that I was going to see the movie. And I just was crunched for time, and literally my mom, being who my mom is, she said, okay, well, we're going to go and we're going to stop in the parking lot, and I'm going to take your siblings into the arcade and you can read. And I did that also for Interview with the Vampire. And Interview with the Vampire, I was not as upset. I understood at that point the changes that were made. Jurassic Park, I was like, but my favorite parts weren't in the movie. And I feel like now as an adult, I'm like, you can't do that in the first movie. There was just so much.
Yeah.
So much you had to get in. And while that was awesome, and the whole Lex's baseball glove being taken by pterodactyls and like this whole thing, you can't. It's not.
I never actually read the book. I think I need to do that at some point in time.
You should.
It's a good read.
Actually, the thing that's shocking is that the second movie is actually better than the second book. Lost World, the movie, because half of Lost World, the movie, was adding in stuff that they cut from the original Jurassic Park
original movie. Yeah,
interesting.
Yeah, but anyway, this has been a conversation long since coming about books versus media, but
I will stick to my guns on my particular philosophy. I've had that ever since I think both me and Luke had finally gotten out of college, and it was both Harry Potter, I think, and Dune that did it to me, where I finally came to the conclusion of if I don't already know about the series, if I haven't already, like, obviously there's several books out there that I've already read. Like, if you come to me with anything in the Dragonlance series, obviously I'm going to have issues because I've read so much Dragonlance.
I got that DVD.
And the couple of times they tried to do it, they failed miserably. So I'm just like, no, just don't touch it ever again.
Really?
Just don't.
It's like you CGI'd over like animation? Why?
Well, so yeah, the problem with the Dragonlance stuff is that they actually, like, Kiefer Sutherland as Raceland is inspired.
Well,
that's a fantastic choice.
Good.
So the casting was really good. Because, like...
And it was just all the visuals that just...
Well, yeah, because they did it in the early 80s Hobbit-style animation, but anytime a dragon showed up, it was the
CGI.
The reboot CGI, like the cartoon reboot CGI, and it was horrible.
Yeah.
But you were so close, and that is what bothers me.
Yeah.
I don't care if something is like, oh, this was horrible, and it was horrible beginning to end, whatever. Now I'm going to watch it because it's funny. Like, I own that Dragonlance movie, and I can't fucking watch it because it was so close to being good. And there are so many parts that are good, and then it fucking sucks.
Well, that was kind of like our what turned into a hate watching of the Swamp Thing.
The beginning of Swamp Thing was good.
But I have to say this one thing. I don't mind movies, however bad they might be, if they introduce even just a fraction of the viewers to the books.
Yeah.
If there is a movie that is made of a book or a book series that sends some people to a book to read, I am happy.
We're looking at you, Ready Player One.
Do you think of it more of like a necessary evil in that sense?
Well, no, I don't.
It's like a gateway drug.
Well, I think that it's I think a lot of movies are made from books that someone loved. It's not because, we can make a lot of money off of this. There is someone who is championing this project because there was something about this book that moved them. And so to me, no matter how terrible the movie is, if someone sees that movie and then finds out there's a book and there's something about the movie that speaks to them and they go and read the book, I don't care if the movie didn't match what the book is.
Well, that's kind of our whole point.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole point of this podcast is that, like we have said, in our opinions, Kingsman and Atomic Blonde, what the movies were, they're very different, and they're in fact, both of them are minimalist to what the movies created. However, if you really like that media, go and read them.
Absolutely.
But we prepare you. If you are somebody that's going to really, really love the Kingsman series, and you go and read The Secret Service, which is what it was based off of, we at least can warn you, hey, by the way, do not expect the Kingsman movie in graphic novel form. It is very different.
Yeah.
And we allude to how it's different, but we're also not going to ruin it for you. And that's all. I think we figured out after 3 seasons, that's a hard line to kind of skirt. But if you love something, or if you really like a media aspect, you should know where it comes from. That is the part of fandom that a lot of these, incels, miss. It's the people on the internet that are like, when did X-Men become so political? From the first fucking issue.
From its literal inception, you idiot.
Like, I knew that as a kid watching the cartoon.
Right.
Like,
This was 100%
like, come on, people.
about racism.
Yeah, this is racist. These are races being oppressed. This is sexual identity being repressed. This is whatever. But it is given the moniker of mutant, and you can do that with so much now.
Right.
So in the similar vein of the whole of the what's better, the movie of the book or the book itself, whether or not it's actually better or not, is it with this further discussion now. There's very, very few opportunities where it actually translates mostly well. So, like, for example, I brought this up earlier with Watchmen. Watchmen is damn near identical to the graphic novel.
It's
we think
practically straight from the book to the screen?
Do we think that is that do we think like that's a mistake? Or like, do you think that they pushed really hard to make sure that it was a 1-for-1, a transfer? Or is that just, or do you think it's something that you couldn't change that the message or the plot or anything about that to make it better for film, or the fact that it just worked?
Josh is chomping at the bit to answer this one.
No, he's given me.
Oh, is that what it was? Okay.
I have 2 thoughts about this. One is that the graphic novel was a perfect storyboard for a movie.
It was.
And the
They
second
didn't
thought,
have to do any storyboarding.
Right.
They literally just picked up the graphic
And then
novel.
Here's your storyboard.
and my second thought is, you know, when you are trying to create a movie and you have source material, you want as much of that source material that makes sense in a palatable amount of time. And again,
We've
just
discovered as Americans
worked.
that you have a maximum of 3 hours. That is the
I like that
absolute
phrase.
limit. Yes, the phrase "as Americans."
Oh, no. A palatable amount
Oh.
of time.
right.
Because
And
even,
so-
sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
I was going to say the whole palatable amount of time, which is why, you know, like we said, like we have these 3 hour chunks, like, you know, as grown adults now, as we find ourselves here with the current state, like I don't have the time I used to as a teenager or as, you know, a college student or just out of college anymore to really sit down and do things like, you know, I long for the days that I could get my friends together and, you know, play Pathfinder Dungeons and Dragons the entire weekend, or, you know, watch movies and read comic books and stuff
Or
like
have
that.
a movie marathon and sit down and watch the entire Harry Potter series from beginning to end.
You know, one of these days I'm going to do it, but it's going to be Godfather, and we're just going to have Italian Day for food, and it's going to be
But you-
absolutely amazing.
You best damn let me know when that's happening.
Trust me, who do you think I'm going to call?
It'll happen in my house. You and your wife will come down.
Right, but I mean, palatable amount of time, and I think that's the thing. Like with more, there's a lot to digest.
Yeah.
You know, and trying to condense down those his works into a palatable amount of time is really tough. But I think what Jen said is the fact that Watchmen is a storyboard, so they were able just boom, here it is. But I think with everything else, if you followed From Hell as a storyboard, whew,
Oh my!
you're probably
goodness.
you're probably looking more at like Netflix miniseries, but it would
Well, yeah,
probably
yeah.
get canceled like a third of the way through, to be honest.
Right, because there are certain episodes that are nothing but the history of London.
Of course.
Like, you know, a dude in a carriage just going around being like, and so from the dawn of time.
And okay, so there are some people. I'm not pointing myself out for this, but there are some people who like that kind of thing.
Well,
There's some people that can watch HGTV for 48 hours straight.
But there are also people who watch
I'm in this comment and I'm
documentaries.
hurt.
documentaries, or you know,
I'm just saying.
Right.
I'm not saying that I don't go over to, you know, Kat's house, you know, you're listening, and, you know, watch like 6 hours of the Motor Trend app shows like
Right.
Roadkill Garage. I'm sure if everybody that was sitting around watching the TV at the time could palate sitting around watching HGTV, we'd be doing that too, because there's a garage going up soon.
Anyway, the point is that Hollywood seems to, and again, we go back to Tank Girl, Hollywood seems to think that they have this need to dumb things down. To
There's
get
a
it.
formula.
They have
Yes.
they have a need to make sure they get a return on their investment is what they have.
Mhm.
With more services coming out like Netflix and Amazon and Hulu and everybody else that's doing all this original programming, do you think because Tanker was released late 80s, was it?
No, early
No.
90s.
Early 90s?
No.
91.
The movie or
Yes,
The movie.
91 was the movie.
Because I remember seeing the movie and I thought that was pretty damn cool. But what I wanted to say was
in, like,
because
2000. No,
maybe it might have been. I don't know. We have to check it later. But anyway,
I'm pretty sure it was early
with the
90s.
fact that because that had to go through, production studios and stuff
Sure.
like that, and there was all that. Do you
I'm
think
sorry,
maybe?
95.
okay.
Do you think that maybe with now that there's all kinds of other services, that are pumping out all this original content, do you think that there's more options for things like that to get a better platform?
Yes, absolutely.
I absolutely agree, because all we have to do is take a good look at the Marvel Cinematic Universe. We have, the Infinity Stone saga.
Right, that's the large tentpole one, but
Right.
then you've got Runaways. Runaways won't work as a series on TV, but Runaways worked very well on Hulu. It ran for 5 seasons.
Yeah.
Then you've got Cloak and Dagger. Cloak and Dagger isn't even going to do a Hulu series, but it
really didn't. It was a struggle.
But it did 2 seasons on Freeform. So you have tiers.
Yeah.
You know, and obviously you have less money in each one of those tiers.
We took other things where, like, we actually took, when we made a series out of a video game for a change as opposed to a movie, and we took The Witcher and we turned it into the next fucking Game of Thrones.
No, I love the fact that they didn't follow the actual books in those, but man, that series, they did a damn good job with it.
Right.
I mean, I can't say that I'm the biggest fan of Henry Cavill after his comments during the Me Too movement, but he did a great fucking job acting.
Right.
As a friend of mine said, thighs like Christmas hams.
Love it.
We're going to put that right beside America's ass and put that up on the wall.
Thighs like Christmas hams.
Nice.
But yeah, it's, I think in last episode I joked about it, but golden age of television. We really are in a place that if you are willing to go to different places and you are willing to stream for a certain thing.
And you don't even have to spend that much money anymore.
No, I mean, we have CBS for $6 a month.
Yeah.
I think the last question for this is the usual. Are we going to keep reading?
So there is no keep reading because From Hell did not go.
Yeah, much like V for Vendetta and Watchmen.
Right. But I think...
Are you going to read any further than you already have?
I think for Luke, would you continue reading Alan Moore content?
Absolutely.
Okay. For the three of us
I highly recommend Swamp Thing.
For the three of us that have now read 4, and I think all of us have read League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, which might be a season 4.
I actually haven't read. I haven't read League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
I got some books for you?
Oh, right.
So that might be a season 4. So we'll exclude League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. He has done stuff in the last 20 years. Would you keep, if you saw Alan Moore's name on a book, would you be like, I need to read that?
Considering that of any comic book author, I can't really name any others that I've read a considerable amount of their work or even watched films based off their work. I would definitely say yes, because he's got the most work that I've kind of ingested so far. And so now that I've actually read From Hell and, seen and read Watchmen, I'm really interested to see what V for Vendetta is like. I knew of Swamp Thing, but I never really went into it. And I know that's one of Bear's go-to, so I'm going to definitely check that out. But yes, I would definitely, if it's an Alan Moore thing, definitely check it out.
Jen and I both had the same moment, like as soon as you finished that question of and then like put our hands over our mouths and let Luke talk.
And then I said, "You Bear."
Yeah, then she's sitting and tapping me like, "You go." So I would have that moment. I'd be like walking through Barnes and Noble or someplace like that, and I'd just be like, there'd be a big display, and it'd just be like Alan Moore, and it'd be blah, and I'd just be like, and I'd literally be like the fist and like biting the knuckle on the fist and be like, do I spend my money? This could be a thing. Could be amazing.
For the listeners out there, if you're kind of holding off on it, I was going through and picking up my copy of From Hell digitally, I did find out that they are re-releasing From Hell in full color in late August. So if you prefer color over black and white, then they're re-releasing it. There's supposed to be some sort of master edition and other cool things with it.
That's actually the version that I've been looking at, is the master edition.
Oh, there we go.
And you say full color, but it's, again, that's the discussion that we were just having about how, like, when you're in Whitechapel, there's not a whole lot of color. When you're in, Queen Victoria's chambers, there's all kinds of colors. So yeah, I mean, take that for what you will.
Sure.
And I think for me, I would, if I saw something that I hadn't read by Alan Moore, I would be interested, but I would also know that it would be taking a definite step because of his writing and the way that he creates scenes. And it's kind of like, yes, I would read it because I know that he has done some really quality things, but I also know that it's going to be...
It's like you walked into Vegas and you walked into a casino and you put $50 down on both red and black, knowing that you were going to lose some money.
You know, and to kind of expound on that, Bear and I have had some of these conversations before. Our classic one is when the original Doom video game came out in the 90s. We both would play that. It's one of my favorite games of all time. But the thing was when I was a kid, and same for Bear too, we had nightmares every night until we beat the game. When the night I finished From Hell, I had those nightmares again. Only It was From Hell style, and I had it for one night, and I wake up in the middle of the night, I'm like, holy cow, damn, that was intense.
Well, just for sake of reference, like I started reading this yesterday, and I read through probably about one of those books, but I was a little drunk from recording 2 episodes. So I slept pretty well, but I've read 3 more graphic novels worth of it today, and I'm probably going to read a little bit more tonight, just because, like I said, I've kind of got this completionist moment going right now. So thanks for that. I appreciate knowing that I'm going to have a fucking recurring nightmare because of it.
Well, I mean, it wasn't recurring. It was one night, and it was after I'd finished, like the night I finished it, because I also advise probably not necessarily reading it before bed if you're kind of one of those people. But normally I'm not, so it was just kind of one of those things. But maybe
personally,
since it's
I had that same moment when I was reading the Zombie Survival Guide by Max Brooks.
So, Luke, thank you so much for coming on to Graphically Novel.
There'll be always the next episode you have me on.
Yes. All good. Yes, absolutely, because this was a lot of fun.
I'll be honest, I'm kind of sad it took this long for you guys to invite me.
Luke, thank you so much for joining us. We really enjoyed having you here.
I appreciate you guys for having me. It was a really great time.
Awesome.
Blast, bro.
All right, and on that note, take it away, Vandello.
Come with me, I'll tell a story that you might have heard before. Graphically novel, but the same old trouble. Villains always knocking at the door. Pretty pictures on the page, but nothing ever stays the same. Do 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 do. Come at me, and I'll show you something you ain't never seen before. Right or wrong, or can't we all just get along? My mask is no different than yours. Pretty pictures on the screen, but nothing's ever as it